Every human being is born unique. Each one of you was born with a DNA and a configuration of your brain that has never happened before in history and will never happen in the future. I compare this uniqueness that each one of you has to a voice that's inside of your head. It's telling you, you should be doing this, you should be doing this. It's what fits you, it's what you're good at. Well, masters are people who hear that voice and they hear it so strongly that they stay true to it throughout the course of their life. You could draw a line from that 8-year-old boy to the 64-year-old man who's on his deathbed.
Have you seen the documentary Free Solo? For people that are listening who haven't seen it, you should go out and see it immediately. It's Alex Honnold free soloing El Cap, and even if you think you know the story, I assure you that this movie will leave you with sweaty palms and your mind blown. The reason I bring it up is it speaks directly to what you're talking about, which is a level of process and mastery that is rare even at the highest levels. When you really get to understand the level of focus and intentionality and the amount of years that went into that accomplishment, you understand it on a whole different level. When he's climbing that wall, he knows every hold, every maneuver, every footstep, and there's actually only maybe 3 or 4 problem areas up the whole wall that he really had to double down on to make it work, and all the rest of it was so rote for him. And if you were to ask him, he's not intellectualizing this. You know, it's so built into who he is. He was successful in that pursuit because this is who he is, fundamentally at his core.
You know, for many, many years, on my to-do list was, you know, solo El Cap, like amongst many other things I wanted to climb. But then I would drive in Yosemite, I'd look up at El Cap and be like, there is no way I'm soloing El Cap. Like, it looks completely insane, it's terrifying, and just the mere thought of it filled me with dread. And so that was a pretty clear sign that I wasn't ready, I wasn't prepared for it, and that I shouldn't be doing that. I wanted to freeze El Cap more than anything I've ever wanted in climbing, basically. I mean, it was a more significant objective to me than anything else I've worked toward.
Right.
And I did certainly worry that it was, you know, too far out.
Right.
But then it's, I don't know, the thing with climbing though is that you can just keep training, you can keep preparing. There's no time crunch, there's no pressure, there's nobody forcing me to do it one way or another. I was kind of able to work at my own pace and just keep working at it until I felt comfortable. You know, until I could finally look at the wall and be like, you know what, like, it doesn't look that scary anymore. Like, I can do this, I am ready, I'm capable, I'm excited about it. Physical preparation is maybe the simplest. I mean, the physical training, being a strong rock climber, being physically fit, being able to handle that kind of volume of training, you know, that's relatively simple. It's kind of the way an athlete trains for any sport. You know, like if you want to run a marathon, you just go out and run more and more miles until you know that you can run a marathon. The mental side of it is a little bit more nebulous though. You know, actually believing that I could do something like that hasn't been done before, that I haven't done before, just having this sort of self-confidence.
I've had friends criticize me for not thinking big enough because each season I sort of choose something that's just a little bit harder. Right. So I've been going to Yosemite every year basically for 10 years, and so that means 2 seasons a year, so that's 20 trips to Yosemite, roughly. But so say that's 16 trips to Yosemite where each time you just make incremental improvement. Each time you try something a little bit harder, a little bit bigger, a little bit faster, or whatever. And you know, after 16 trips, eventually you climb El Cap.
But there are definitely steps in the process, and I do think that if you break it down as a process, I mean, I had all kinds of you know, tick lists and boxes to check, and milestones in the preparation. Yeah. I mean, there was a tremendous amount of effort that went into the preparation, and then the actual climb all went pretty smoothly. It's just 4 hours of climbing, but you know, it's freaking months and months to get there.
I'm only smiling at 4 hours of climbing.
Well,
What was the original, like Royal Robbins? What was it, 40 days?
Well, so the first ascent of El Cap was done over 49 days, I think.
Yeah, 49
and then,
days.
Yeah, and then the second ascent was a week. And now typical parties on El Cap spend 3 to 5 days. So 4 hours is trimming it down a little bit.
So sometimes that confidence just comes from feeling super, super fit. Sometimes that confidence comes through preparation and rehearsal. But I mean, there's always something that makes you feel ready.
Can we rewind and start a little bit at the beginning? You know, we know you began climbing in a gym and focusing much of your time in Yosemite. Was there kind of a point you realized that climbing was going to be like your main passion? Was there a point where you're like, I can't breathe without climbing?
No, I mean, there was never a moment where I decided, now I'm going to climb for the rest of my life. But it's just that every day I wake up and I'm like, I want to go climbing. Yeah, I've just always liked climbing more than everything else. I've wanted to go climbing 5+ days a week for the last 20 years, and I still want to just as much, so.
I've always appreciated that he never told me beforehand that he was going to free solo or anything. I could come down on him and say, you shouldn't be doing that, and alienate him, and it would have alienated him, because that's his whole life. I think when he's free soloing, that's when he feels the most alive, most everything, the most, feels the most. And how can you even think about taking that away from somebody, you know?
I think my parents definitely instilled a drive for excellence, or, to do your best, or to always...
And how did she do that?
Like a nice saying, like, good enough isn't. Like, that's a nice...
That was good enough. Good enough isn't.
Yeah, good enough isn't. That's what you should tell your kids. No, but just a general drive to do your best, try your hardest, to work. I don't know.
There's a satisfaction to challenging yourself and doing something well. That feeling is heightened when you're for sure facing death. You can't make a mistake. If you're seeking perfection, free soloing is as close as you can get. And it does feel good to feel perfect, like for a brief moment. It's also just like kind of rad because you're doing something for the first time in human history.
So you say in the film, motivation is performance, not happiness. Well, what do you mean by that, if you expand?
Well, I just think it's important to actually achieve things. I don't know. I mean, so in the film, I mean, that's kind of a contrast between me and my girlfriend, because she's kind of arguing that a happy life is a good life. And I was sort of like, at some point you actually have to achieve something in life and do something. I think the reality is obviously the tension between the two of having a balanced life, being relatively well adjusted and happy, but also achieving something hopefully, or doing something useful in the world. I mean, I definitely have always felt a certain drive to do something in climbing. Actually, I think that maybe the better way to phrase it is that I've always felt like if you're going to do something, you may as well do it well.
Yeah.
And so, I've devoted basically my entire life to rock climbing, and if I'm going to put all my time into it, I want to do it as well as I can.
The thing is, anybody can be happy and cozy. Nothing good happens in the world by being happy and cozy. Like nobody achieves anything great because they're happy and cozy.
It's really hard for me to grasp why he wants this. But it's his dream, and he obviously still really wants it.
So my father died when I was 19, and actually in the few years before, or maybe the year after, but both my grandfathers had died as well, and so it was just kind of a lot of heavy, family, all sort of at the end of high school, and I don't know how much that. I think the main thing that I take away from that is just it's a reminder that life is short and you need to do the things that you want to do. You don't have forever.
There's incremental advances that happen in all kinds of things, but every once in a while there's just this iconic leap. Soloing El Cap, if he pulls this off, is this quantum leap. It is hard to imagine somebody up there by themselves without a rope.
It's about being a warrior. It doesn't matter about the cause necessarily. This is your path, and you will pursue it with excellence. You face your fear because your goal demands it. That is the goddamn warrior spirit. I think that the free soloing mentality is pretty close to warrior culture, where you give something 100% focus because your life depends on it. And when people talk about trying to suppress your fear, I mean, I look at it a different way. I try to expand my comfort zone by practicing the moves over and over again. I work through the fear until it's just not scary anymore.